All right. Well, I don't want to hold you back for being on time. So we are going to get started. And the people who missed the first part, well, they'll miss the intro, but they can go back and watch the recording. Welcome, everyone. It's really great to be with you. Thanks for joining the session, especially on a Saturday. Kudos to you. You all are investing in yourself so much that you're like taking time out of your weekend to do that. So good for you. I am going to give you a quick heads up about where we're headed in this session. So over the next 30 minutes or so, we're going to go from philosophical to practical, from hypothetical to personal. I'll share some personal stories, real life case studies, research and tools that'll help you understand what beliefs are, how they can help us, and how they can hold us back. You'll gain a better understanding of the healthy self-belief, what that means, and you'll have an opportunity to reflect on your own beliefs and examine whether those might be getting in your own way. Finally, you'll get a bit of a preview about how I work with clients in overcoming their limiting self-beliefs. This content will probably get a little academic, but I promise you that I'm going to bring it to life for you. So just bear with me. And I'm committed to making this enjoyable and worthwhile, a good use of your time on a Saturday. So first and foremost, I am a dad of two young boys. They consume a lot of my time, energy, and my heart. You're going to see lots of pictures of them today. I'm a dad trying to keep my family first as I build a meaningful career. That's a tension. It's hard. It's not easy. But what I'm hoping to do is teach you what I've learned along the way. Mostly I do coaching as a passion project on the side. I have a full-time job, and I'll talk to you a little bit about what that is. Educational background, I did my undergraduate at Brigham Young University. I did graduate school at Northwestern University, which is where I received a training coaching certificate in organizational leadership and coaching. And just a couple of professional highlights. I spent 10 years at Google, leading various HR initiatives, coaching over 100 fellow kind of employees on their careers. And I facilitated several dozens of workshops across the company on topics related to team effectiveness. I spent 1 year at X, which was before Twitter became X. X is the moonshot factory within Alphabet, where they develop projects like self-driving cars. I led leadership and organizational development there, where I focused on things like manager development, executive coaching, and helping people develop mindsets that help lead to innovation. I am currently a senior manager of performance and talent management at Pure Storage. If you're not familiar with the company, they're a data services company based in the Bay Area. They're fast growing. They have 6,000 employees and $3 billion in revenue, and serve most of the Fortune 500 companies. I am responsible for things like executive succession planning. So trying to understand, if our CFO left tomorrow, who should replace them? And also looking at things like talent reviews and end-to-end performance management. So that's a little bit about me. In terms of housekeeping, just for today, I want to create the best learning environment. So just kindly request that you adhere to these norms at a most tactical level. Use chat for questions and stay on mute unless you want to share something. It's up to you if you want to share your video or not. It's helpful sometimes to see people that I'm talking to, but it's really up to you. I would love to hear what you want to take away from this session. What drew you to this topic, and kind of what are you hoping to get out of the next 30 minutes? So if in chat, you could just add that, and then I'll start kind of reading through those, and I'll skip ahead, and I'll do my best to tailor the content to whatever you're kind of hoping to learn. Okay. Stand out as a job seeker from other applicants. That's really important, especially right now. It's a tough market. Lots of people are looking for jobs. So yeah, that's a great goal. Gain more confidence in job search and networking. Love that. Yeah, confidence is definitely tied to some of what we're going to talk about today. There's a healthy degree of confidence, and there's confidence that can get in the way. So we'll talk a little bit about that. proactivity in identifying limiting beliefs. I love that. Love that. And what I might not be fully aware of. Okay, you come to the right place. Those are definitely things we're going to be talking about today. And becoming better at networking motivation through any rejections to come. Yes, not letting rejections get to you. Rejection's hard. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about self-belief. What are we really trying to do here? So a personal story. A little over 10 years ago, I started my first job out of undergrad at Google. Now, if you had told me a year before that I was going to start my first job at arguably at the time, like one of the top employers, I wouldn't have believed you or said that was possible. Frankly, I had a lot of self-doubts, and they almost got in the way of me applying for the job in the first place. During the interview process, I was really concerned, like, do I even have a shot at this? And I tried not to get my hopes up. And then even when it came time to getting the offer and accepting it, I was nervous, like, am I really going to be successful at this company? And I just in over my head here. Now, self-doubt can get in the way, like I just described, of what almost happened to me. It can also be a kind of good thing. Even like imposter syndrome has some upsides. It can help motivate us. It can help us work harder, be smarter, and also make us better learners. So have I confused you yet? The title of this session is Self-Doubt to Self-Belief, Overcoming Limiting Beliefs. What do I really mean by that? I'll admit the title could be a little bit misleading or confusing because it could imply that self-doubt is bad and self-belief is good. In reality, some self-doubt can be helpful, while certain kinds of self-belief can be unhelpful. In his book, Think Again, Wharton professor Adam Grant defines optimal self-belief as something he calls confident humility. This is the type of self-belief that we want to focus on and that we're going to talk about today. It's the sweet spot between two extremes. On the one side, overconfidence or blind arrogance. This is when people are too certain about their own beliefs and abilities, leading them to be closed off to information or different perspectives. On the other side of the spectrum is debilitating doubt or pure humility without confidence. While humility is crucial, complete lack of confidence can really lead to inaction, insecurity, and an inability to pursue goals. And this can manifest as imposter syndrome if not leveraged efficiently. So this is, again, what we're going for, self-belief as confident humility. Now, confident humility, Grant describes it, includes three things: having faith in your capabilities, being confident in appreciation for the unknowns, and then the self-belief also includes detaching yourself from your beliefs from your identity. So on the first piece, having faith in your capabilities means that you believe in your ability to learn, adapt, and ultimately achieve your goals. This provides drive and self-assurance to take on challenges. The second piece is about appreciating that you might not have the right solution or even be addressing the right problem. This is the humility part. It involves recognizing that you don't know everything and being open to reevaluating your perspectives. And then the third piece, detaching your beliefs from your identity. The benefit here is that when your beliefs are not tied to your sense of self-worth, it becomes easier to admit mistakes and change your mind without feeling personally threatened. It's also involves staying openly active-minded and seeking out information that might challenge your existing beliefs. So a lot of our focus today in our session is going to be on this last piece, examining beliefs and, when necessary, changing them as a function of helping us develop confident humility. So let's talk more about these pesky limiting beliefs. What are they? How do they form? Now, based on my experience and my study, as well as my work with clients, here's what I believe about beliefs. We all have them. We may not realize that we have them, but we all do have them. Beliefs can change. They can change both intentionally and unconsciously. Not all beliefs need to be changed necessarily, and not all beliefs are limiting. And I'll talk more about what specifically limiting beliefs are in a couple of minutes. We hold beliefs, but they also can hold us, meaning they can hold us back. And evolving beliefs opens up new possibilities for growth. And if we believe it, we will see it. Okay. Curious if in chat, if those resonate for you, or if you have other things that you learned about beliefs, I'd love to hear what you think about it. Moving on. So beliefs play an important function in our lives. I don't know if you've seen Ted Lasso, wonderful show. This is a great example of like how it can motivate and inspire us to action to accomplish amazing things. They can also protect us from harm. On the flip side, there's a dark side to beliefs, particularly when they go unexamined for long periods of time. So limiting beliefs can arise from a number of factors like experiences, conditioning, and cognitive biases. So on the cognitive biases side, some of these could be confirmation bias, where you see what you expect to see; desirability bias, where you see what you want to see. Confirmation bias is about what you expect to see. And then my personal favorite on the bias front is the I'm not biased bias. Smart people are really good at this one and have this one a little bit more frequently. The reality is that limiting beliefs hold us back from reaching our potential. And some of the peskiest ones are also unconscious. So here's another big concept that I want to talk about today. Identity foreclosure. So we're not talking about the housing market here. We're talking about ourselves. The concept of identity foreclosure can be helpful to illustrate the impact of letting limiting beliefs govern your life, whether they're unconscious or conscious. The idea is that we may prematurely commit to a sense of self without sufficiently exploring different alternatives, closing ourselves off to potential better options and making it difficult to de-escalate. This can result in kind of three archetypical outcomes: dreaming too big, dreaming too small, and ignoring aptitude or talent. So I'm going to talk about those three and just give you a sense of why we should really try to address this issue of limiting beliefs. Okay, so again, one of the outcomes of identity foreclosure is choosing a safe or conventional career path that doesn't challenge you or require much personal exploration. And this is often driven by a need for approval or a lack of exposure to broader possibilities. So a personal example, when I was an undergrad trying to figure out what I wanted to do in my career, I took classes, a few classes around the school, but ultimately I was pretty confident that I wanted to pursue dentistry. So I had a couple of close family friends who were dentists and orthodontists. I had had braces a few times. I knew what the work looked like. They seemed happy enough, and I appreciated the services that they had provided to me. My mom seemed to think dentistry was a great path, and so she continued to push me to do that. And I was pretty good at math and science, and so I figured, hey, why not? Now, there's, to be clear, nothing wrong with being a dentist. I clearly didn't become one. It's not a small effort to become one either, and it's definitely not for lack of ambition that people become dentists. It's just that for me, dentistry did not align with my interests, talents, or passions. And I nearly settled because it was the comfortable, the known, the predictable, yet unfulfilling job. It would have been safe, but not fulfilling. What cued me into this when I was like really trying to decide if I wanted to do it was that I just didn't have a general sense of motivation to do anything related to the dentistry pre-requirements other than the classes. And I had this nagging feeling that I was giving up my freedom by choosing dentistry. Okay, so here's the next example. So a second scenario of identity foreclosure is dreaming too big. This can often come from being laser focused on a particular career profession that maybe was instilled early on from questions that you were asked as a kid, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? You anchor on those decisions and basically you push for that dream, regardless of whether you've changed since you were 5. Ryan's story really demonstrates this. And so we're going to use it as a case study later. And I wanted to just read this so you can kind of understand the full context of what happened for Ryan. So Ryan knew exactly what he wanted to be when he grew up. Becoming a doctor wasn't just the American dream, it was the family dream. An MD was practically preordained. Ryan could push himself to study for long hours, but it drained him. Drawn to something more active and social, he toyed with the idea of squeezing in an economics major along with pre-med, but abandoned that idea when he got to college. When he was accepted to an Ivy League medical school, he asked if he should do a joint MD MBA program. He hadn't lost his interest in business, but he was afraid to divide his attention. He wasn't sure if he was cut out for neurosurgery or if the career would leave any space for him to have a life. He wondered if he should start a healthcare company instead. But when he was admitted to Yale, he opted for the residency. He regularly suffered from the heartache of losing patients and the headache of dealing with abusive attending surgeons. Although it was his childhood dream and our grandparents' dream, his work left him little time for anything else. Ryan decided that he couldn't give up. He had gone too far to change course, so he finished his 7-year neurosurgery residency. Today, Ryan is a neurosurgeon at a major medical center. In his mid-30s, he's still in debt from student loans more than a decade after graduating from med school. Even though he enjoys helping people and caring for patients, the long hours and red tape undercut his enthusiasm. He tells me that if he could do it all over, he would have gone a different route. Okay, so last example. The third archetype of identity foreclosure is ignoring aptitude or talent. You see two budding musicians here, my two boys, right? Now, in a study of amateur musicians, those who had settled on music as a professional calling were more likely to ignore career advice from trusted advisors over the course of the following 7 years. So how does this play out? Basically, people who aren't good enough to be top tier professionals ignore the advice of their most trusted mentors. And they might have been really good at listening to music and to their hearts, but they basically tuned out their mentors, instead kind of basically digging in their heels and pushing forward into this less than illustrious music career. So now that we have all these depressing examples behind us, those are the 3 ways in which limiting beliefs can really manifest as being problematic in our careers and our lives. Let's talk a little bit about how we overcome them. It does start with reflection. So the idea of deep self-reflection is not new. If you're like me, maybe in your 8th grade English classroom, your teacher plastered this quote on the wall. Again, Socrates and others have talked about the value of deep self-reflection for many, many years. This is the most academic part, so brace yourself. There is a modern theory developed by Robert Keegan of Harvard University that I have found helpful in my work with clients when it comes to overcoming limiting beliefs. So Keegan's theory involves 2 primary concepts: subject and object. Things that are subject are unquestioned, unseeable, and therefore unexaminable. They, in essence, reside within us and serve as the lenses through which we interpret our experience. Things that are object can be seen, considered, evaluated, and actively shaped. For purposes of my oversimplified drawing, they exist outside of us. So to be clear, beliefs, limiting beliefs even, can be both subject and object. Beliefs that are subject would be unconscious, but still directly be influencing our behavior, while beliefs that are object would be made conscious and malleable and more loosely held, adaptable, evolvable. So the key component of Keegan's development theory involves moving things that are subject to the object state, so they can be evaluated, examined, and shaped. This is about raising awareness of our blind spots so that we can make choices about whether we want them to change. So importantly, Keegan's research shows that people who have gone through these subject-object shifts demonstrate greater mental flexibility. They're better at taking responsibility for their thoughts, navigating ambiguity, processing information, seeing beyond themselves, and for our conversation, ding, 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 overcoming limiting beliefs. Often coaching focuses on increasing knowledge or skills, informational learning. This is important. It's helpful. I do it with my clients. A substantial amount of my coaching on top of that involves helping my clients make subject-object shifts by building their self-awareness. I often act as a mirror, exposing blind spots so that we can talk about them. This helps transform my clients, not just inform my clients. It does demand a lot of openness, deep reflection, and effort on the part of the client. And to be frank, disassociating yourself from a belief can feel a lot like you're losing a part of your identity. I mean, it can trigger feelings of grief. Yet when clients put in the work, it can result in deeper, more meaningful, and lasting change. Okay, now we're going to get personal. So if you registered before like noon yesterday, I sent a link out to a spreadsheet version of a career belief inventory. If you didn't get that, I have this presented up here. I think if you have the digital version, that'll probably be a little bit easier to use. I recommend that you pull that up. I'll see if I can find the link and I'll put it in the chat. I want you to spend 2 minutes basically evaluating how frequent or common are some of these beliefs showing up for you. After you do that, I want you to pay attention to, which ones did I have a reaction to? Ones maybe felt surprising, made you laugh, cringe, potentially. Those can be cues into maybe a potential strong belief that exists, or maybe an opposite belief that exists for you. So I'm going to give you 2 minutes, and while I do that, I'm going to look and see if I can find the link. I will send it in the chat momentarily. Any questions on what we're doing here? If you have questions, add them to the chat so I can explain. But again, the goal here is for you to think about yourself. How frequently are these beliefs maybe present for you? Okay, and here is the link to the inventory if you didn't get it in the email. So just go ahead and make a copy of that. Okay, I'll give you 30 more seconds. And if you don't finish this now, that's okay. You can keep working on it later. We won't be evaluating, reviewing these together, but hopefully they start to give you a sense of, interesting, maybe I should think about this more.
Grant, I'm not sure how to download it. I have a Google Doc here, Google Sheets here. How do I download it?
If you hit File, and then you should be able to download it from there.
Okay. Very good.
Do you see that option?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Awesome. Okay, so we're going to move on for the sake of time. So once a potential limiting belief has surfaced, it's been identified. In a conversation with a client, what I like to use is a process called subjective reframing. Now, so subjective reframing involves looking critically at the assumptions and beliefs, understanding the role that they've played in our lives, and then changing them if we choose. And it involves 6 steps. So I'll walk you through kind of what this process looks like. In the first step, you identify the limiting belief. You start by articulating the specific belief in plain language. So you might say something like, I'm not good enough, right? Or you see the other ones that I listed in the inventory. The belief inventory that we completed earlier can be a step in identifying those beliefs, but they may not be perfectly resonant for you. And that's okay. They're hopefully starting to create hotspots for you. And then through telling your story, I would try to understand what words are you using? what specific choices are you making and why? And that's where we can start to understand what beliefs might be driving you. And then we begin to articulate them. Another important piece of this is asking yourself, when are these, so I'll go on to the second step. Sorry, I skipped ahead. So tracing the origin. So the second step is where you ask questions like, when was the first time that you remember thinking or feeling this way? Who told you this? Was it direct or indirect? And what experience led you to conclude this? Also important in understanding here is, does this belief only show up in certain circumstances or scenarios? And if so, why? Why do we think it's showing up there? Step 3 is where we try to understand the benefit of our beliefs. We don't typically keep beliefs if they don't have a role that they're playing in our lives, whether they're protective from harm or whether they're driving us or motivating us or giving us some success in some way. So understanding what role has this played in our lives, how has it been helpful in terms of protection or motivation. Step 4 is where we examine the evidence. This is where we challenge the belief by asking questions like, what objective evidence supports this belief right now? Is there any piece of evidence that contradicts it? And is this belief a fact or an interpretation? Step 5, consider the cost. What is the belief costing you in terms of your goals, your relationship, and your well-being? And then step 6 is about reframing. This is where we get to make a choice. Once we've moved from subject to object, we've evaluated the benefits and the cons, or the pros and the cons of this belief. We get to basically say, what's the verdict? Is this worth keeping, or do we need to shift or eliminate it? This can be hard, frankly, to wholesale just 180 get rid of a belief. And so what I typically like to recommend with my clients is that let's build from your belief, let's tweak it, and let's start to stretch into a more healthy mindset, something that gets us closer to that self-belief that we're looking for. This can look like just adding a few words to the end of their articulated belief, changing a few of the words, and I'll show you an example of what that might look like in the next couple of slides. Okay, so we're going back to Ryan's story. We read this long paragraph, and that's important because now you have the context about who Ryan is and what happened. So let me show you how, if I were coaching Ryan, how I would use his story to try to understand his belief, what benefits and detriments it's causing in his life, and how we might overcome it. First step, identify the belief. Now I made this really easy here because I put it right at the top. When I was reading the book that captured Ryan's story, it was more embedded in the text. So I pulled it up to the top for you. But this clearly is what was driving Ryan. He stayed motivated amid a lot of challenges and doubts because he wanted to stay on track to meet his family and early childhood dreams. Number 2, so tracing the origin. In Ryan's story, it's clear that the belief started really early on. It was preordained by his family. It was repeatedly reinforced through his interactions with his family, and there was no question that becoming a doctor was his path. The third step, understanding the benefits. So in Ryan's situation, he clearly benefited from this belief. This gotta stay on track led him to get over hard things, study hard. He was admitted to great educational institutions. He secured a great job where he helped people in meaningful ways. So it's not all bad here. This is definitely important to call out. The fourth step is evidence that might suggest this belief isn't valid anymore. So Ryan could have taken many paths, many tracks. If you look at the evidence from his story, there were lots of different things that aligned better to his innate interests and his motivations. While his medical studies drained him, he was naturally repeatedly drawn to economics, to business, and to starting a company. In my personal story I showed earlier with dentistry, I had the hardest time going to any meetings about dentistry, but I found totally easy to join any meetings about business. And so I ended up joining the business school. Even now, looking back, he admits that he would have chosen a different path. Okay, so step 5, consider the cost. This is pretty clear that it's had some negative impact on Ryan, this belief. It drained him, it cost him heartache, headache, it saps him of his energy and time, and he's now deep in debt, working long hours and feeling unenthusiastic. Okay, now here's the last part. So what's the verdict? Really, it's Ryan's choice. And I'm not working with Ryan literally, so I can't tell you whether he would have made the decision to keep his belief or to shift it. What I would suggest, though, is based on the downsides that he's experiencing, we should at least try to re-articulate something. If I were coaching Ryan and he decided that this belief was something that he wanted to work on, the reframe that I would suggest would be anchored again in those three things we talked about earlier in confident humility: faith in your capabilities, appreciation for the unknowns, and separating your identity from your beliefs. So how does this play out? The proposed reframe that I say here, staying on track means staying true to myself, uses some of the same language Ryan is using: staying, track, and it gives space for Ryan to separate his limiting beliefs from his identity, to stay true to himself. And it implies a degree of unknown, allowing for Ryan to be adaptable and responsive to new experiences as they come. Curious if you're going through this experience and you have other ideas about how Ryan could reframe. Add them in the chat. I'd love to hear what your perspective is. I can't stress enough though, this is not as easy as just like writing on a page and saying like, cool, we've overcome this limiting belief now because we came up with a cool way to talk about it. That's not what we're getting at here. This isn't about tricking our brain. This is about creating a new pathway for your brain. It's about helping you figure out that there's another way to think about this, and hopefully to reinforce this pathway over time as you continually try and practice this way of thinking, that it becomes a more default way that your brain works. For better or worse, our beliefs shape us. They influence our motivations and behaviors. And when we invest time and effort in examining our beliefs and reframing them, when necessary, it opens us up to new possibilities for growth and transformation. That's all I have prepared for you today. So I would love to have, if you found today's session interesting, helpful, informative, transformational, any of the above, I would love if you considered leaving me a 5-star rating. I am still building my coaching practice on Leland. So if you could help me, I would be so appreciative. And then I would love to keep connected with you all. So if you want to connect in the way that's meaningful for you, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. You can subscribe to me. I have a weekly post that I write about leadership and careers on Substack. This is a free subscription. And then if you want to chat with me one-on-one, like schedule a free intro session. It doesn't cost you a dime. And I'd love to dig more into your goals and what you're working on. And then lastly, and we will get to questions in a second, if you would like to work with me, I am offering a very short time window of a discount code that you're welcome to use to get 20% off packages of 300 and more. So with that, we'll move on to some questions. So I'll stay on. If you don't have questions and you want to hop, then you're welcome to. But if you have questions, oh yeah, let me put up our QR codes again for a second so that you can see them. Here, I'll just let them hover here while we do questions. So I think I saw a question in the chat. Is this a recorded session? It is a recorded session, and it will be available on Leland Plus probably in the next week or two. So if you don't have access to Leland Plus, maybe reach out to me and I can try to share. I'll make sure that it's okay with the Leland team because I know they're particular about Leland Plus content being restricted to Leland Plus kind of subscribers. So how do I give you a rating? I will tell you if you give me a 5-star. No, I'm just kidding. You just need to follow my profile. So if you do the, I think you actually might get an email after this with like an invitation to rate me. But if not, you can just use the QR code, go right to my profile, and you should have like a way to rate me. Is this a recorded session? Yeah, I answered that question. How to reframe. Allow for the unknowns and other two things I didn't catch. Sorry, can you articulate what your question is, Rosanna? I want to make sure I'm not misunderstanding.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully you can hear me. And when you created the reframe from I got to stay on track to staying on track means staying true to myself. You mentioned you went through 3 things, and I think I got that one of them was allow for the unknowns.
Yes. So it's at the very top of our kind of a session today. I talked about what self-belief really is. And so I anchored on that so that whatever the limiting belief we're reframing from to is a strong, confident humility, a self-belief that will drive Ryan to good outcomes. So I anchored on faith in his capabilities, appreciation for the unknowns, as well as separating his beliefs from his identity. So that those informed, they're not like, it's not like a mathematical like translation of these three things mean this for this particular belief. So what I suggested is like, okay, I'm using these as references to help me inform how I might help Ryan reframe his limiting belief to a more positive belief. Is that helpful?
Very much. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. I'll go back to the QR codes. Any other questions? You have me for 7 more minutes, so I would love to answer any questions that you have. Do you have any more upcoming sessions like this one or similar? I don't have any scheduled sessions right now, but if you have something that you'd like to learn about, I would be very interested in hearing what's on your mind. I did a session on strategies for career development a month ago. That will be available on Leland Plus soon as well. So if you are a Leland Plus subscriber, then you should be able to see the recorded session. Brian. Awesome. Thank you. I'm so glad it was helpful.
I have a question.
Yeah, please.
So in a lot of your examples, someone has a goal and there's a limiting belief preventing them from reaching that goal. From someone whose limiting beliefs are preventing them from making goals, how do you work through that?
Yeah, so I think the process that I would do is very similar to kind of what I described. So I would start with your story. What is happening in your personal story? If you were the person that we're talking about, maybe this hypothetical person, I would try to understand, okay, so tell me a little bit about when you've tried to make goals, like what gets you in the way, how does that show up? Trying to understand, again, tracing the origin of what's happening. Maybe there's a limiting belief, right, that we could articulate that would then, the goal is to make goals, basically, right? So it's not so different from what we describe, but it's just like earlier in the process that they're getting caught up. Is that helpful? Cool. I completely agree with the concept of confident humility, but I find that it can be easy for me to veer into an insecure humility. What are your ways to do? What do you recommend to identify the line between the two? It's a great topic. I have a book recommendation for you. I referenced it multiple times throughout our session today, but it's Think Again. I'll type it in the chat. If you're really interested in this personally and you want to spend some time really thinking about like all the tips and ways to do this, then I would recommend this book. I think that going back to the slide at the beginning, let's go all the way back. Is there a faster way to do this? I'm probably missing navigation here. Okay. So again, I think that this matrix shows us two different factors that we're considering, right? There's the belief in yourself and there's the belief in your tools. If you're feeling that you're veering into insecure humility, what box do you put yourself in? Curious. Quadrant 1. So I think that if I remember my math, is that this one? Obsessive inferiority. Is that right? Okay. So I think that you're confident in your tools then, basically. You understand the process, you understand how to do things, but you're still feeling like you are super insecure. It's an interesting question. Again, similar, I would want to understand like where do we think this is coming from, right? And what have you tried or not tried that might be able to be helpful? This is one that I would probably have to dive deeper in. I don't think there's an easy answer about like how to help, besides a coaching session, frankly, would be really helpful for you to be able to understand what's going on here. I like to spend a lot of time with people who they don't know what's going on. Those are like my favorite clients because those are where you're actually going to have the deepest kind of reflection and exploration. Like obsessively inferiority or like an analysis paralysis. So there's one other topic that maybe can help. So I think that confidence, we often misunderstand. We think confidence comes before action. Action typically actually precedes confidence. We're confident not because when confidence doesn't then allow us to do things. We become confident because we try things. So there's a mindset that is probably limiting your experience with action or whatever the goal is that you're talking about. And a reframe for you might be that, hey, to become confident, I need to be okay with failure, right? I need to be okay with trying things and not being successful. And actually that is the process to confidence. So that's probably along the line of thinking that I would help. Does that help? How long do I work with a client? It can be one session or it can be 2 years. I've worked with both ends of the spectrum. When I was at Google and I worked with like over 100 different people, I had people who reached out to me. They had one very specific goal. They're like, hey, this is my dilemma. How do you help me? They got what they needed. They moved on. They were happy. Other people, they came to me and then they were like, they worked with me for 5 sessions and then they disappeared for 6 months. And they're like, Grant, I need your help again. A new thing came up. And then they came back and we did 6 more weeks of like sessions. And so I have those longer term relationships and I love both types of engagements. So if you're in either of those 2 categories, then please do reach out. Oh yeah, big fan of Originals. Great book. Adam Grant's I'm a bit of a fanboy, if you can't tell yet. So I love all of his books. If you haven't read Adam Grant, I highly recommend him. Are you working mostly with professionals or students? I can work with both. I do say that most of my work is universally helpful. I think that the price point that I'm at may or may not be prohibitive for students. It depends on what your budget is. My budget, my price model right now is $125 a session. So I think that's probably why some students self-filter out of my kind of offering. But yeah, I'm happy to work with others. I would say that most of my work is not related to admissions coaching. So there's a lot of great coaches on Leland that are about like, how do I get into this school? I could help you with that. I also would probably defer you to somebody who has a lot more experience in that. Most of my experience is working with professionals. Would you mind touching more on the overdreaming phase? How do you know if you've reached that stage? I guess the question is, when do you determine that you don't just have the ability to meet the goal? Overdreaming being the inaptitude and the like lack of talent. That one, is that the one you're referring to, Armel? Is it this one that you wanted to get clarity on? Or is it the dreaming too big one? You still there? Okay. Maybe while we wait, does anyone else have a question? I've got time for maybe one more question, then we can hop. Oh, this Ryan one sounds like it. Yeah, I mean, I think the words you're using, I'm just making sure. Yeah, please let us know how to watch the recording. Would we get a link? I can double check with the Leland team if you don't have access to Leland Plus, how we would get you the link. But if you're a member of the Leland Plus, if you have access to that, then you'll be able to navigate to it. But I'll send it out to the group. If you were registered, then you'll get access. So how do you know if you've reached that stage? I think that what I would ask myself is, Adam Grant, again, in his book, has this concept of a career check-in, which he says he asks his students multiple times over the course of their like interactions with him. And he says it basically is 2 questions. The first question is, how long ago was it that you determined to work on this goal, this aspiration that you have? And how have you changed as a person since then? That helps you basically start to understand, like, is this goal still relevant for me as a person, right? And if you've evolved in a way that aligns even better to this goal, then great. But if you've started to like move away from what this goal is all about, that might be a helpful like indicator for you. The second piece of his kind of check-in is really around, for those who do have currently jobs, like, has your learning started to plateau in your current role such that you're not growing, or you don't think that you're going to grow anymore in that job? So those are kind of the 2 suggestions that I would give, maybe in terms of trying to understand if you're on that path of escalated commitment and identity foreclosure. Does failure of launching fall into a limiting belief? Mary, tell me more. What do you mean by that?
I just have a question. Like, what if you're one of those type of people who's always learning? So you're always accumulating these types of degrees, and it just doesn't seem to be enough.
You're accumulating what? Did you say? You just got a little quiet.
These types of degrees, like you're always just acquiring degrees and certifications.
You're like you mean formal educational like degrees? You're just getting more and more schooling?
Right.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I'm so curious about that. Like what's motivating the desire to get more, like, I guess, degrees and versus trying something else. I think it's very personal, very different. I can just, my first reaction to this without knowing who we're talking about, is that there could be some fear involved. Are you doubting your ability and you need someone else to say that you're capable, right? That could be one of the potential limiting beliefs, is that I'm not good enough, right? Until someone else says I'm good enough for this. There could also be some other fears around failure, right? I don't want to try it because if I'm not good, so I'm just going to study it instead. So yeah, there's probably lots of possible things going on there. Is that helpful?
Yes.
I also like degrees too, so they're always bad, but okay. Why don't we do one more question? You guys are asking great questions, so. Would it be considered limiting my beliefs if, let's say, I want to learn IT support instead of software development? My first reaction is I'm not sure, but I don't know what is driving that change. If you want to learn IT support instead of software development because you don't think you're smart enough, then yes. Or that other people are smarter than you, then yes, I think that's a limiting belief. If you want to pursue IT support instead of software development because you believe that profession actually better aligns with your skills, your interests, you're more in, like, you want that interaction with people and kind of addressing their problems real time, versus software development, but that could be a little bit more like behind the scenes, sometimes developing the code and then launching. That could be actually not a limiting belief. That could actually be a lot of self-awareness that you've decided to move that direction versus software development. So I think we'd have to understand and unpack that a little bit more, like what's driving you to choose one versus the other. Yeah. Okay, I think we're at time. If you have any other questions or you want to continue the conversation, please do reach out, connect with me on LinkedIn, schedule a session. I'd love to keep the conversation going. You've all had great questions, and I hope this was a really good use of your time today. So take care and best of luck to you all. Bye now.